Before leaving Ohio, Anna and I met with David and Tammy a second time. The first meeting was at Red Lobster, the day after arriving. I saw Dave as a man struggling with finding peace. I could see he needed answers to what happened to his daughter. I wanted everyone to be comfortable at this meeting, so I asked Anna not to take notes. The location I picked was very significant to the case. You see, Katelyn was planning to go to Red Lobster for her 22nd birthday, but she didn't make it. We spoke about specifics of the case before dinner. After dinner was served, about 30 minutes after we sat down, I changed the subject. We spoke about normal, everyday things such as, work, boating, fishing. This was emotional to Dave, and I felt we needed a break. After we finished eating, we started talking about the case again. I made a promise to Dave at that dinner that investigators don't normally make, and I usually avoid altogether. I said, I'm going to find out what happened to your daughter. At that time, I could see my old sergeant in my head telling me, don't promise anything to anyone about solving a case. I'm going to try my hardest, or we're going to do everything possible, but do not promise a conclusion. If you can't deliver, then the victim's family may build animosity towards you. Or, even worse, they will hold you personally responsible for not solving the case. Dave didn't really respond to that comment. He just took another drink and we started talking about something else. His hope was dwindling. I'm sure he had a hard time believing that since at that point 4 law enforcement agencies had assisted in the investigation, including the FBI, there will be one more agency to investigate about 10 months later. But who was I? A private investigator from Florida 1,000 miles away, and I'm going to solve the case? I didn't blame him for writing that comment off, but I'm very well trained, and I had experience and skills necessary, but one thing Dave didn't know about me, at least at that time, I am extremely hard-headed and stubborn, especially when it comes to facts. I also had one more little detail in my favor. I am very good at not just interviewing people, but forming relationships during those interviews. That's the salesman in me. It's my sales experience, not my law enforcement experience, that will take me a lot deeper into this case. I could see the love Dave had for his daughter. It made me think about how much I love my son and the pain I would feel if I couldn't see, hug, or watch him play football ever again. This was getting personal. The second meeting was at Outback Steakhouse. There was more of a relaxed mood than the first meeting. I told Dave of the failed polygraphs from Heather and Ryan and the fact the police had never spoken to them. I did see a glimmer of hope in Dave's eyes, but that glimmer was just that, a glimmer, and it wouldn't last long. We were far away from justice and peace at this point. The rest of the dinner was relaxing and less stressful. We laughed and shared stories from our lives. It was like I was speaking to a long-lost friend. After a little over an hour, we said our goodbyes, and Anna and I headed back to our hotel room. We were leaving early the next day. This is Gone at 21, The Investigation, Episode 4. During my interview with Matt Rokamp, I asked him about a stalker or creeper that may have been obsessed with Katelyn. Have you heard about a stalker that possibly, or someone that was kind of
A creeper?
creeping on her? Yeah.
What was that guy's name? What was that guy's name?
Aaron something. We heard when we were looking for him, we like drove by his house a bunch of times to see if we could see him.
Darren?
No,
Aaron.
she said Aaron.
Is it the alright?
AA. That's a man, AA.
Yeah, I don't remember what the guy's last name was, but there was like when everything first happened, like we were trying to figure out anything that we could because we didn't feel like the police did enough. So I spent hours. We spent hours. Even after the cops stopped looking to look for Katelyn, I've been through more sewer systems and behind people's houses in Fairfield that most people have never been through.
What is his address? Do you know his address?
No, it's off of Reeser. It's off of Reeser. It's off of Reeser Road.
Reeser?
Yeah. Oh shoot! Give me a second and I'll hold
Would
up.
John know him? Would John know what his last name is?
Maybe. I don't know. He might. He might not.
And well, now was he a creeper? Was he trying to stalk
Yeah, he
her?
was a kind of a creeper, dude. Like a couple other girls said he was kind of a creeper too. Reesor Road. It's RESOR Road.
Would you know the house if you saw it?
No, it's been 4 years.
Now that guy,
He ended up actually getting arrested too.
he did
Yeah, the Aaron guy.
for what?
I don't know
We
something.
researched to figure out he was in jail the time she went missing.
I don't know.
That's where we looked him up on that Butler County jail.
But that was before because we were stalking out his house.
So, what did this guy supposedly do when Katelyn was alive? Was he calling her, or
Like
just-
he would just like message her and stuff like that.
It was only on Facebook, obviously.
Yeah, I'd never met this kid.
But John knew about him.
John knew about that. Like us saying him. I don't know if John knew the kid either, but because we also talked to him about that when we were all trying to do what we can to try to figure something out.
Did she ever complain about him? Like he won't leave me alone, or or he's a friend of mine, or what did Katelyn say about him? Did she say anything?
Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
The female voice in the background was Matt's girlfriend. Now, Matt had the name wrong while I was interviewing him, but he called me and gave me the correct name a couple hours later. For this podcast, the person will be referred to as Christopher. Christopher went to high school with Katelyn and had a couple classes with her and seemed to be really infatuated with Katelyn. This was according to her friends and classmates. I contacted Detective Irvin and asked her about Christopher. She responded by saying he's a little weird, but that was it. She didn't think he had anything to do with it. She told me Christopher was thoroughly checked out at the beginning of the investigation. I was told Christopher was in jail at the time Katelyn disappeared by several of her friends. Now, Detective Irvin did not mention that. What she did mention was he violated his probation for not registering his new address as a sexual predator. I left this alone for a while after Detective Irvin's comments and the comments by friends saying he was in jail during the time of Katelyn's disappearance. I looked up his details through the Department of Corrections, and the release was well after Katelyn's disappearance, and of course his entry date was well before. So it appeared he was incarcerated prior and released after Katelyn's disappearance. The DOC did not differentiate between probation and incarceration on the page I viewed. But I later discovered through court records that Christopher was not incarcerated during the time of Katelyn's disappearance. In fact, he was on probation. Christopher violated two different rules. Number one, according to the court records, rule number 16, which he accessed a Facebook account, due to the fact Christopher solicited a minor on a computer with the intent for sexual activity, one of the rules for probation dictated by the court was that Christopher would refrain from using social media. And the second reason was exactly what Detective Irvin said, for not reporting a new address as required due to his sexual predator status. Now, Christopher published a post on Katelyn's Facebook page in the days just after her disappearance. He apparently, from what I have been told by friends that saw it, posted something like, "Come home soon, we miss you." I'm not sure of the exact wording, but this is what I was told. In addition to Christopher's sexual predator status, he also has history with violent outbursts of anger. According to classmates and other people who attended the same school he did. One particular incident happened during graduation day. A witness reported Christopher got mad about not being able to stand where he wanted, so he started punching a concrete wall. A teacher had to stop him. So, looking at Christopher, I currently have, number one, a person who was obsessed with Katelyn, per numerous friends and classmates. Number two, a sexual predator status. Number three, someone who displays angry fits of rage, like hitting a concrete wall. The information about Christopher being free during the time Katelyn disappeared and his fits of rage came later on in the investigation. Can I rule Christopher out as a suspect? No, not for a second. I did contact Christopher, but it wasn't until later on in the investigation. Christopher has a cell phone in his father's name, and the address he had on the sexual offender site was wrong. Again, at least in 2016 it was. And it appears he jumps from house to house. There is much more on Christopher, but I will dive into that later on in the podcast. After returning to Florida, I received info from an anonymous caller that a Richard, a.k.a. Ricky Fields, had information about a possible suspect in the Markham case. I contacted Ricky by leaving a message with his dad, and Ricky contacted me back a short time later. Ricky had a lot to say about Michael Palmerton, who is John Palmerton's brother. I don't know if you remember, but John Palmerton is John Carter's longtime childhood friend. I spoke to Ricky and got the full scoop before turning on the recorder. So you may hear me refer to my notes as I ask Ricky questions about his previous statements. How do you know Mike Palmerton?
I know Mike Palmerton through John Palmerton from when I was working at Frisch's at the same time.
Okay, tell me about your relationship with him and the relationship that Mike had with Katelyn.
I've become, pretty decent friends with Mike, based on musical interests together, and Mike's relationship, as far as from what I've seen with Katelyn, was that he hung around Johnny C quite a bit, and when he would hang around Johnny C, Katelyn was always there.
Did he express any feelings about Katelyn to you?
Always.
Tell me what he said.
On a daily basis, anytime I'd ever see him, a lot of times he would, go on about how he wanted to fuck her and how he was pretty much in love with her, and he wished that her and Johnny would break up.
Okay, so just about every time you saw him, Katelyn's name would come up and how he wanted to be with her, and you said fuck her?
Yes.
Did John know that Mike had something for Katelyn or an obsession with her?
Yes.
Tell me how you know that.
Just they would get annoyed with each other and get into little arguments over that. Like, John would tell him, don't say ignorant stuff about her. He would tell him, your woman looks good and all that other stuff, and if you're not going to treat her right, I'll take her, and just stupid things like that.
Ricky says he thinks Mike was obsessed with Katelyn and refers to another woman who Mike made feel really uncomfortable. Just in case you're wondering, yes, we have heard her name multiple times in this podcast.
I myself would call it an obsession because I'd also seen him, he was real, I would say was obsessed with our other friend, Heather, to a point where it got that same way, and she got very uncomfortable with him, and with her as well. There had been nights we'd all been together and, hanging out, and he, would go up to her and do and say very uncomfortable things. And
This was to Heather or to Katelyn?
To Heather.
That's Heather Hapney?
That was Heather Hapney, yeah.
Okay.
And he made her feel real uncomfortable there for quite a few years.
Ricky played in a band, and the band practiced at John Carter's house. In early 2011, an incident occurred, according to Ricky, at one of those practices. Tell me about band practice at John Carter's house, where something that Mike did and John did. Tell me about that.
Well, at this time, Mike apparently got a little bit more gumption with the drugs and the alcohol that he was doing, and it pretty much led him to hit on Katelyn and verbally tell her about him wanting to have sex with her. Well, basically tell her he wanted to fuck her right in front of Johnny's feet. And actually, he did go up, and this is one detail another detail I remember him going up to her and rubbing her head with his hand. That kind of struck Johnny C in a little negative manner, and Johnny C didn't like it so much and just told him to get out.
So Johnny C kicked Mike Palmerton out of his house because he was making sexual comments to her and then actually touching her. Is that correct, on her head?
Yes.
Okay. And did that put a strain on their relationship, Mike and John's?
Yes.
Okay. How long before Katelyn went missing was this particular band practice?
That was in February of 2011.
February, so several months.
Night before the Super Bowl, actually February 6th.
Okay.
February 5th.
Ricky said strange events took place the night Katelyn disappeared. Let's listen. So now we're gonna fast forward from February to where he gets kicked out of John's house for telling basically Katelyn he wanted to fuck her, and he said that in front of a bunch of people, right?
Yes.
Okay. And touching her, so he gets kicked out by Johnny C. And then what happens August 13th, 2011, the night Katelyn actually went missing. Can you tell me what occurred with you and Mike Palmerton on that night?
On that night, my fiance had left with her mother to go to the store, and I got a call from Mike Palmerton, and he seemed kind of frantic, and he wanted to know if he could come over and hang out, and I was reluctant to let him come over just because pretty much the way he sounded. And
what do you mean by that? Is he an alcoholic? Is he what is he on drugs or what?
yeah, that's the reason why I hadn't seen him for a while, because I saw he was going downhill, and I just didn't want nothing to do with that.
What kind of drugs was he on?
Heroin.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I figured, well, it's been a while since I've seen him, so I told him I'd rather you not, but, whatever, if you want to stop by, that's fine, but not for long. So he ended up coming to my door, and he was a mess. He was frantic, he was nervous, he was dirty and wet, and it had been raining outside that night, so that's pretty much why I assumed he was wet. And he had also alluded to the fact that he thought he had hit somebody with his car in Kroger parking lot, which I found very disturbing. Basically, he said, dude, I think I hit somebody with my car in Kroger's parking lot. And he also had with him a 40-ounce bottle of something. I don't know what kind of alcohol it was, but he had a 40-ounce bottle of alcohol with him, which he actually, I know for a fact he had purchased at Kroger, because that's what he told me anyhow.
What time did he come over?
He came over, like I said, anywhere between 11:45 and 1 o'clock.
That's 11:45 p.m., 1 o'clock a.m., right?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I let him in. He had his guitar with him as well. So I expected we were going to play a little bit, but he was pretty nervous and went on. A lot of his rambling didn't make any sense, and I'd attribute that to drugs and him being nervous about the fact of him thinking he hit something or someone in the parking lot of Kroger. And he was just kind of freaking me out as well. And pretty much right in the middle of all of his rambling, going on nervous, he ended up passing out on my couch. And it was hard to get him to wake back up. And when I did get him to wake back up was around a little bit before my fiance got back in with her mother-in-law. And he'd actually made a couple of verbal passes at my mother-in-law, sexual comments that made her kind of made her mad, so she told him off, and they got into a little argument, and I told him it was time for him to go, and he got pretty belligerent with me about it, and asked him how I could let him drink and then go out and drive his car. So I gave him some coffee, and then a little later, he went on his way.
Now we're going to listen to two different conversations Ricky had with Mike after Katelyn's disappearance. And it is very interesting the way Mike reacted to Ricky as he spoke about the disappearance of Katelyn. Okay, so the next day, you had originally told me there were two conversations. This would be the 14th of August, 2011. Tell me about the first conversation you had with him. What you guys talked about.
The first conversation, he had basically told me that he was a little bit worried because he didn't quite remember everything that happened, and he pretty much asked me, well, what the hell did I do last night, is one of his questions, and he said that the things that he could remember were possibly hitting something or someone in Kroger's parking lot, and it being rainy. Pretty much saying that, he was kind of speeding to the parking lot and couldn't stop or whatever. And I told him, I said, yeah, that much as far as I know, it's what you told me that happened, and I don't know any about the rest because he didn't go into it. And again, he was frantic about it, and he told me, he feels that he's done something wrong and not to mention a word about it to anybody.
Did he ask you for help with anything?
Yeah. That was another thing that he said the drugs are, his heroin use was getting a little bit far in too deep, and that he was thinking that his mother was figuring out what was going on with him. So he asked me to look it up on the internet if there's any quick ways that he would be able to get off of it.
And you said that earlier in our conversation before we turned on the audio, you said it would make him do bad things, or what? How did you put it?
Yeah, they were starting to make him do things out of character, things that he didn't know what he was doing, screwed up things.
Okay. And then that was basically the content of the first conversation, right?
Yes.
Tell me about the second conversation.
And the second conversation was him calling me up, and he wanted to. I'm thinking that he wanted to know what I found out from my search on the internet, and I asked him because I had seen it on TV. I asked him, I said, "Did you hear about Katelyn?" I said, "She's been on the TV pretty much," and he got nervous at that point, and he didn't want to talk about it at all. He basically said, "Wow, that sucks," and he said, "Well, I don't want to talk about that. Don't mention it anymore." Like, as in, it was upsetting. So I assumed since the families were close, he didn't want me to mention it to him anymore because it was upsetting him due to his brother John being close to her or something.
Okay, so when you mentioned about Katelyn, he basically said, "I don't want to talk about that anymore."
Yes.
Okay. Did you find that odd, though?
I found it very odd. I found it disturbing because at that point, in my mind, even I told my fiance about, how weird he was acting. She could see it, but she didn't know about the first half of the night with him coming over. And immediately I started to think, and I saw her on there, and then I'm like, nah, it can't be. And then the more and more the years went by, the more my mind goes thinking about things, and the more he doesn't, want to talk about it. He's isolated himself from myself and pretty much from everybody else in that circle of people.
Something an investigator wants to know is specifics about the personality of an individual suspect or person of interest. What type of person was Mike Palmerton? Does he have a history of violence or any type of abuse? In this specific case, how did he treat women? This is something we need to know. Have you seen Mike be violent with anybody?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen him. He's attempted to be violent with me, but I've knocked him on his ass a couple times. He tried. And him on his ass in defense of one of my friends that was a girl. Her name is Jill. She lives right over there in Fairfield. And I was having a little party at my brother's house, and Mike came over. And he actually whipped his thing out and put it on top of her head while she was facing another direction. And I happened to see it, and it pissed me off. I said, "Jill, don't even look behind you." And I said, "Get up and come over here." Because he was apparently drunk, or he had something going on with him that night that was unstable. And I'd kicked him out of my house for that one, too.
Wow, okay. So he pulled his penis out and put it over her head?
Yeah, yep. And said, "Guess the object," is pretty much what he said.
Wow. And has he been violent with women?
Yeah, Yeah, he got violent that same night with Heather Hackney, actually.
What did he do to her?
He punched her right across her face.
He punched her across the face.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And then a bunch of us went out in the garage to see what was going on. And by that time, he was pretty drunk off of his ass, so she was beating him down pretty good. She had him on the ground and was beating on him. So
he punched her first, though.
Yeah, he provoked it. Well, she might provoke. Well, no woman deserves to get hit in the face for any reason whatsoever. But she probably said something that him as himself didn't like to hear, and he had reacted in a stupid way.
Hey, any other?
That's just kind of how he is.
Any other instance where he was violent with a woman?
And not unless something might have happened over there at Asia's when he lived there. I know he's acting real weird and just being obnoxious over there, and he kind of scared her a little bit living over there. And I always tell her, you got to get him the hell out of your house.
Asia?
Yeah.
Okay. And violent tendencies with other male, not just females. Tell me what you've seen.
I've seen him hit Johnny C. about 3 separate different times while he was drunk. Him and Johnny C. would get into a little argument, and he'd hit John.
Hit him in the face or the chest or what?
No, he punched him in his face.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, he threw a full beer can at his brother John one night, and it almost hit him. It came real close to hitting him right in his head.
Wow.
He got kicked out of Mason's for that one.
He's just getting kicked out of was he drunk? Is he always drunk or high at
Yeah, he's just a dick when he's not drinking or whatever. But most of the time he had been drunk,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add to it?
Trying to think here.
So you would consider Mike to be a violent person?
Yeah, I would consider him to be. Not while he's sober, no.
Okay. Anything else that you can remember about this incident where he and Katelyn had gotten into it or did something to Katelyn or Johnny C? So you said you saw him hit Johnny C in the face on 3 separate occasions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the one night was the night that Johnny graduated high school.
Wow, okay.
Right at the graduation party.
Do you think he protects him because he's John Palmerton's brother?
I can probably see it that way, yeah. Or possibly there's another dynamic where, if he doesn't, then something's going to come out with all 3 of them.
Okay. You heard Ricky say Mike Palmerton hit John Carter. So, how did John react to Mike's punch in the face? And is John Carter a violent person? That question is very relevant to this case.
Pretty much took the punch and cried, really, is all that happened. That's the way he was back then. I don't know about now, but I know that back then he would not protect himself whatsoever.
So, he knew I could punch John. He's not going to do anything back to me.
Yeah, pretty much.
As far as John hurting anybody, you haven't seen that, Johnny C?
Oh, Lord, no. He's a gentle soul, man. That's how I get confused when I read on, some of these things where people are saying that, that he did something, to her. in any, kind of malicious way or whatever, unless something had changed with his mind since the last time I'd seen him, which, I guess you never know with people.
Right.
That's the whole confusing part about it.
Right. Another question I had for Ricky was, what did Katelyn's disappearance trigger in Mike? Did he quit his drug use and drinking? Or did something else happen? After Katelyn went missing, what did his behavior become? Did he get off heroin? Did he get worse? What did that trigger with her missing, and then eventually they find her in Indiana? What did that trigger in him as the years went by?
As far as I know, just because of the fact that I had only seen him a couple of times after that. I saw him once in December of 2012 after that, and then once again in early 2013. But I had talked to him on the phone, maybe once every couple months, and he seemed to be truthful with me about his condition, and as far as I could tell you, that it definitely got worse. He got way worse off on heroin after that.
Now, I didn't know Ricky from Adam at this point. I didn't know if he was telling me the truth. I didn't know why he was coming forward now. And I investigate this. And not everything that he's saying could be backed up with fact. Several items were confirmed fiction. So we're going to dive into that at great length. I text Detective Irvin at one point and informed her that I wanted Ricky to take a polygraph. And something interesting happens with Ricky when I asked him to take a polygraph and meet with Detective Irvin. Thanks for listening to The Investigation, Episode 4. Be sure to listen to Evidentiary Notes next Wednesday, March 22nd. We will explore the second and third recorded interview with Ricky Fields. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. Thanks to those who have rated and reviewed, and if you haven't, please take this opportunity to do so. We are just 14 short of our goal. Please take a peek at the Gone at 21 Facebook page. While you're there, please note the GoFundMe page pinned to the top of the wall. Just press the link, and any amount you're willing to give will be greatly appreciated. Until next time, I'm Jay Ryan. Take care.